innocent of. I'm about to bring on David Martinez. He is running for the St. Paul School Board, and in light of his being here, I looked up some statistics in terms of educational issues in America. And according to the data from the Center of Education Statistics, 88.2% of Minnesota students graduated after 4 years in high school. That actually puts us at the very top of the nation, and you really have to dig into the statistics a little more to find out what is really going on here in Minnesota. And new federal data this week indicated that Minnesota actually ranks last in 4-year graduation rates for Latino and American Indian students. It's second to last in the nation for black students, and at the very bottom for low-income families. So if you're a low-income family in Minnesota, if you're a Latino American or African American, Asian American, the statistics are showing that these students are not graduating at high enough rates, and their proficiency in math and other subjects are actually lower than their white student counterparts. So with that, I'll bring on our guest, David Martinez. David, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. And you made an announcement this week. Do you want to just tell the audience a little more about that?
Absolutely. So I've been involved in the school districts for a number of years, probably 7-8 years in one capacity or another, as a volunteer, as a mentor, as a translator. I translate for the Spanish-speaking families. And in 2011, there was an open seat on the school board, and I put my name kind of in the hat and was a finalist. So I was being considered to fill that seat. And recently, members of the school board, community folks who know who I am and my interest in education have encouraged me to run for the open seat on the school board. And I've decided that I'm not too young to run. And I was mentioning to you that you were partly responsible for my decision. You didn't know this, but I met you last year when you were campaigning, and I looked at your background, your age, and I could relate to, we're the same age, we share a lot of similarities in terms of our careers, and you ran for a very high-profile office. So seeing that made me realize that I'm not too young, that there's no better time to do this than right now. And I reached out to you, and you were so kind to allow me to sit with you and talk about this and introduce me to the people of St. Paul. So I appreciate that.
Well, it's great to have you here, and I definitely, anytime I see young people out there that are willing to make better communities, to make stronger schools, to build a better future for Minnesotans, it definitely gets me excited. So I'm glad that you're here, and I hope we're going to take this time to really introduce who David Martinez is to the audience, and I hope that you're able to come back a little later as your campaign progresses more, and perhaps we'll focus even more on the issues. What did you think about some of those statistics, that I cited in terms of the achievement gap here in Minnesota? It's pretty alarming to me.
It is. It is, and it's probably the number one thing that is being talked about in the St. Paul schools. There's a lot of money and resources and people being allocated to address the achievement gap because it's been pointed out at the federal level. Minnesota still is regarded, like you said, and like the statistics say, as a state with very good education. Families still move here, and St. Paul specifically, for the quality of education. But if you look at how the Latino families, the poor families, and other minority groups, it's not a pretty picture, and that's part of why I'm running. What I'm hearing in the community as well is, in order to close the achievement gap, in order to get more engagement, more parent engagement from these communities, we need someone from that community. We need someone who's talented. We need someone who is aware of the issues. We need someone who can speak the language to come in and run for office. I mean, that's not a guarantee that you'll win, but it seems like more and more that's what's being asked. And there don't appear to be too many candidates that fit that profile, and I think I fit that profile well. And here I am. I have a 5-year-old son who's entering the St. Paul Public Schools next year, so that's another reason why I'm running. And the school district is coming off a lot of great accomplishments. They just passed the levy. They renewed that levy, so there's additional funds coming in for technology enhancements. Enrollment is up. I think we're now the largest school district in Minnesota, or close to it. So a lot of good things going for St. Paul Public Schools right now. And what I hope the residents of St. Paul will realize is that they now have a representative from the Latino community. His name is David Martinez, and that I have a lot of energy and interest around this topic, and that I'm in it for the right reasons, and that I'll be calling on all of them, all 300,000 or so, to vote for me come November 5th.
Well, let's talk a little more, first of all, of your personal history.
Yeah.
Were you born and raised in St. Paul? Or?
No. So, and that's great that we're starting there, because I think people need to understand my background in order to understand why I'm running. So this will take about 8 minutes, and we can have a conversation.
Sure.
So I've broken it up into my childhood, which did not start in St. Paul. I was born in Puerto Rico, actually, and my mother and father separated when I was young. And this story is becoming increasingly common among students and families in St. Paul, which is another reason why I'm a good candidate. 10 years ago, my story was very unique, right? First generation Latino student, English language learner. So I learned English in the St. Paul Public Schools. So a big reason, or a big part of how I'm able to have this conversation with you, is because the St. Paul Public Schools gave me the ability to speak English. And it was through their investments in English language learner programs that I'm able to communicate this effectively with you today. So I entered the 3rd grade, learned English in St. Paul schools, and then from there I went on to the University of Minnesota through a program that a lot of people call an affirmative action program. It was an intake program for students that were good students. So I had almost a 3.0 GPA in high school, took the ACT, did okay on it, but I was still a high-risk student, meaning there were very slim chances that I would continue on to college, because no one in my family knew how that process worked. So the University of Minnesota had a program that intentionally went out and searched for these kids, and they found me, luckily, and I applied and I got in and graduated from the University of Minnesota. So again, investment in programs, whether they be affirmative action or otherwise, that allow children from underrepresented groups, underprivileged, whatever you want to call it, to have a shot, are things that I support. I benefited from those programs, and those are things that I'll fight for as a member of the St. Paul Public Schools. I also met my wife in college. That's a whole nother story that we won't get into today. But I did want to share a couple of stories from college. So when I was in college, I already shared the Summer Institute program, the intake program. When I was there, I partnered with 11 other guys, and we started the first Latino-based multicultural fraternity in the state, known as Sigma Lambda Beta. And it was a group that was, the principles are brotherhood, scholarship, leadership, community service, and cultural awareness. Those are all principles that we grew up with. They're principles that are very kind of relevant and top of mind within diverse communities. And we formed this group. We have an 85% graduation rate. That's amazing. A lot of us are first-time college graduates. And I give...
First time, you mean coming from families with the person graduating for college for the first time?
Yes, in their families. And I credit my graduation from the university to that group of guys, because I hit a number of kind of pits during my career in college, and those guys were there to lift me up and encourage me to continue and kind of refocus. And the third story that I'll share with you about the college career was that my first real job was with the Minnesota Department of Education as an intern. And again, it was a program that they had, affirmative action. It's called the SEEDS internship program. And the goal of the program was to bring students in, first-time college, first-generation college students, to bring them into like that corporate or professional environment and give them an idea of what it's like to work in an office. So my job was actually to audit state and federally funded projects across the state. specifically around prevailing wage. And it was there that I had the first glimpse at the inequities that exist in our system, specifically in the labor sector. And what I mean by that is that on almost every job that I would audit, where there was a large Latino or immigrant workforce, there were prevailing wage violations. And the most rewarding thing for me was, I'm a 22-year-old kid, 21-year-old kid going on this site, and the foreman's running up to me saying, you can't talk to these guys. How dare MnDOT send, a Spanish-speaking auditor out here, right? So it was fulfilling for me to represent the Latino workers, but it was also sad to see that those kind of issues existed. So those were the stories I wanted to share about kind of college and my involvement with the Latino community, just to let the public know that I have been an advocate for Latino communities, Latino families, Latino issues, and education is really the Achilles heel of our community. Until we get our education levels up, it's going to be kind of continued challenges. We may lose another generation, and I don't want that to happen. I was close to falling through the cracks myself, but thanks to the investments that Minnesota and St. Paul made in programs geared at kind of sealing up some of those cracks, I am now able to sit here and say, first person to graduate from college, first person to get their master's degree, first person to work in a professional environment. I've been at Wells Fargo for 11 years, first person to run for office. This is all new to my family, and I told my mom that I was running for the first time yesterday, and she was like, she didn't know what to say. She's like, oh my goodness, do you want me to like cook you some food so we can do a fundraiser? People love my food. We'll
Great
sell
idea.
it. Yeah. So it's exciting, and that, just even running, it creates a sense of pride in the community, which is great. And it goes back to my point about you running. You influence me running, who knows, will influence some other young people. So it's great.
Yeah, and I remember the Cinco de Mayo parade this year. It was actually the day after Leona and I got married. We got married on May 4th, which was a Friday, and the Cinco de Mayo parade was the next day. And of course, we went to the parade because we had the full swing of the campaign. But I'll never forget going down Cesar Chavez and seeing the kids on the street, and a couple of them pulled out their IDs. And they were looking, they were like, we got the same name, like that. And you could just see it in their eyes. So I definitely believe what you say in terms of inspiring other people to run and to let people in the community know that it is possible, that there is a route, and that together we can be successful. And I really want to hear a little more about the cultural struggles specific to the Latino community. In particular, you mentioned English and how you learned English in grade school. And that's a problem with many of the Latino students is the English proficiency and to be able to keep up in school with the English-speaking students. And can you talk a little more about that?
Absolutely. I've worked with probably hundreds of students, Latino students in the schools. And, what they tell me is that it's difficult because they have so many things on their shoulders that mainstream society doesn't understand or can't relate to, and I'm the oldest of 6 kids, single parent household. So I understand a lot of those issues and the burden that these kids and the adversity that they have to overcome. First, you're poor. You don't have enough food. Usually there's domestic violence, substance abuse issues. I remember going to school with like the same pair of, pants for days at a time. And what happens when you get to school is your friends like make fun of you. People make fun of you. And then you go into the cafeteria and you have the different colored lunch ticket that says I'm poor, right? So then your friends make fun of you for that. And I'm someone who, I didn't have it as bad as what you would traditionally consider a Latino person. I don't look Latino. Nobody ever says, oh, you're Latino, not even after they know that my last name is Martinez. So I didn't get the worst of it, but I still got picked on. I still had to overcome all of that adversity. And, we look at these kids and we say, oh, you need to learn the language. Well, there's nobody at home to help me with it. So if you're not helping me at school and we're not spending extra time and there's not tutoring available, guess what? When I go home, I just have all of these other issues that I need to face and deal with. So I think we need to do a better job of understanding that. And then the other thing we need to do a better job of, in my opinion, is letting these young kids know that, it's not their fault and that we're behind them, that we want them to succeed. But yet we put up all of these roadblocks or barriers for them, especially for those kids that are dealing with citizenship issues, right? If you have that on your plate on top of everything else, you're basically sitting there thinking, wow, why should I graduate? If I do, how am I going to pay for school? There are no scholarships opportunities for me. It's not my fault, but everybody seems to think it is my fault that I need to go back home. My mom or my dad brought me here, and I was fortunate enough that I came from Puerto Rico where you're born a citizen or you're a citizen, so I didn't have to deal with all of that. And it was hard enough with everything else. So I think we need to just understand all of the factors that are at play before we start jumping to kind of assumptions. But of course, language, that's like the fundamental. You need to kind of have a good grasp of the language. So continued investments in those programs, I think, is critical.
Sounds good, David.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming to the end of our segment here,
Okay.
but I was wondering, do you have a website that people could find out more about your campaign? Or?
Not yet. I just announced this week, so this
Okay.
is like my 4th or 5th day in this. I'm still learning how it's all going to work. I'm still looking for a campaign manager, a finance manager, a website guru. So if anybody out there is interested, has experience, please let me know. Right now, you can find me on LinkedIn and on Facebook.
Okay.
And
that's David Martinez. Can you spell your last name?
Yes, it's Martinez, and it's a very common name. There are 8 David Martinez's at Wells Fargo, probably hundreds.
Well, Tony
in
Hernandez, I
Minnesota,
deal
yeah.
with that quite often. If you
So-
Google Tony Hernandez, you'll get everything.
So just Google David Martinez, Minnesota. I'm the first result. My
Nice.
LinkedIn profile comes up. That's the best way to reach me, and then on Facebook.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I certainly hope that you can come back to the show maybe in like 2 or 3 months or something, give
Sure.
us more updates, and that way too we'll be able to talk more about the issues which we really want to get into at some point.
Absolutely.
So, David Martinez, thank you very much. Best of luck in your
Thank
campaign.
you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. So we have our